The throne room of the Velen Empire was built to make visitors feel small. Giant pillars of black stone rose toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Golden light fell from floating orbs, casting everything in a cold, powerful glow. At the center of it all sat High Lord Merrick on his throne of conquered bones. He had ruled the empire for 60 years. In that time, his fleets had swallowed 300 species across 5 star systems. Some had begged for mercy. Some had tried to fight. None had survived his wrath. The galaxy knew his name. The galaxy feared it. So when his advisor approached with news of a strange signal from uncharted space, Merrick felt nothing but mild curiosity. "Show me," he commanded. The advisor pressed a device in his palm, and a hologram flickered to life before the throne. It showed a distant cluster of stars, marked in red to indicate unknown territory. A single blinking dot pulsed at the edge of the region. "Our long-range probes detected this signal 3 cycles ago, my lord," the advisor explained. "It appears to originate from an automated beacon. We have translated its message. Play it." The hologram shifted, and a voice filled the throne room. It spoke in the common galactic tongue, but there was something strange about it. Something calm, almost gentle. "This is the territory of the United Human Collective. Turn back. We do not wish conflict. But if you cross this line, you will find none." Silence followed. Then High Lord Merrick began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle and grew into a roar that echoed off the stone walls. His advisors shifted nervously, unsure whether to join him or remain silent. Finally, Merrick wiped his eyes and leaned forward on his throne. "Humans," he said, tasting the word. "I have never heard of them." "Have you?" The advisors shook their heads. "Then they are weak," Merrick declared. "Unknown means unimportant. Unimportant means prey." He waved his hand dismissively. "Send Admiral Gorn. Tell him to take the 3rd Conquest Fleet and bring these humans to heel. I want their worlds. I want their resources. And I want their leaders kneeling before me within the month." The advisor bowed deeply. "It shall be done, my lord." Far across the galaxy, in the cold silence between stars, the beacon continued its endless broadcast. Ships of many species pass by it every day. Traders, explorers, refugees fleeing wars of their own. All of them heard the message, and all of them turned away. They did not know much about humans, but they had heard enough stories to know that some borders were not meant to be crossed. But the Velen Empire had never heard those stories. And so Admiral Gorn assembled his fleet with the confidence of a predator who had never known fear. 40 warships, 800 fighters, 50,000 soldiers trained in the art of conquest. The 3rd Conquest Fleet was a hammer designed to crush civilizations, and Gorn had swung it many times before. As he stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Burning Dawn, he felt nothing but anticipation. "Set course for the human border," he commanded. "Maximum speed." His second-in-command, a scarred officer named Drell, stepped forward with a datapad. "Admiral, I have reviewed the probe data. There are some inconsistencies." Gorn glanced at him. "Explain." "The human systems appear lightly defended. Our scans show minimal military presence, but their technology readings are strange. Some of their stations are running power outputs that do not match their size, and their communication signals are heavily encrypted. We cannot decode them, your point." Drell hesitated. "It may be a trap, Admiral. They may be hiding their true strength." Gorn laughed, though there was no warmth in it. "Every species we have conquered has tried to hide something. Their weapons, their leaders, their hope. It never matters. We find it all, and we crush it all." He turned back to the viewport, watching the stars blur as the fleet jumped to faster-than-light speed. "These humans sent a warning beacon. That tells me they are afraid. Afraid species do not fight. They run, they beg, they die." Drell said nothing more, but he could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. The beacon's message had not sounded afraid. It had sounded certain, in the Sol system, at the heart of human space. Admiral Park J received the news in his private office. He was an older man with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. His uniform was simple, unmarked by medals or ribbons. He did not need decorations to prove what he had done. Dr. Ko Mina stood before his desk, her hands clasped behind her back. She was young for her position, but her mind was sharper than anyone in the fleet. "We intercepted their deployment orders," she said. 40 warships. 50,000 soldiers. They will cross the border in 6 days. Jay was silent for a long moment. He stared at the data on his screen, reading the numbers again and again. Finally, he looked up. "Have they responded to the beacon?" "No, Admiral. They are ignoring it." Jay nodded slowly. He had hoped it would not come to this. Humanity had spent centuries climbing out of its own darkness. They had learned through blood and fire that war was not glory. It was pain. It was loss. It was the death of futures that would never be born. But they had also learned something else. Something the Velen Empire did not understand. Peace was not weakness. Peace was a choice. And humanity had only chosen peace because they had become so good at war that they no longer needed to prove it. "Wake the ghosts," Jay said quietly. Mina's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "Yes, Admiral." She turned and left the office. Behind her, Admiral Park Jay stood and walked to his window. Outside, the stars glittered in the endless dark. Somewhere out there, 40 warships were racing toward his people. Filled with soldiers who thought they were coming to conquer, they had no idea what was waiting for them. And by the time they understood, it would be far too late. The third conquest fleet crossed the human border on the 6th day, exactly as Dr. Komina had predicted. Admiral Gorn stood on the bridge of the burning dawn and watched the stars shift as his ships entered unknown space. He felt a thrill of excitement in his chest. This was the moment he lived for, the beginning of another conquest. "Status report," he commanded. His sensor officer studied the screens before him. "All ships have crossed safely, Admiral. We are detecting nothing. Nothing. No enemy vessels. No defense platforms. No communication signals." The officer looked confused. "The system appears to be empty," Gorn smiled. "They have fled. Just as I predicted. The humans heard we were coming and ran like cowards." He turned to Commander Drell. "You see? Your concerns were for nothing." Drell did not answer. He was staring at the viewport, his eyes fixed on a distant space station that drifted in the darkness. It looked abandoned. Its lights were off. Its docking bays were empty. But something about it felt wrong. It felt like a closed eye pretending to be asleep. "Admiral," Drell said slowly, "may I suggest we send a probe to that station? To confirm it is truly abandoned?" Gorn waved his hand impatiently. "A waste of time. We push forward. The sooner we find their homeworld, the sooner we end this." The fleet moved deeper into human space. They passed more stations, more satellites, more signs of civilization. All of them dark, all of them silent. It was as if the humans had simply vanished, leaving their entire territory behind. For 3 days, the fleet traveled without encountering a single living soul. On the 4th day, the problems began. It started small. A communication relay on one of the outer ships stopped working. Then another. Then a third. Within hours, the fleet's long-range communications had gone completely dark. Admiral Gorn called for repairs, but his engineers could find nothing wrong with the equipment. It simply would not work. "It is interference," the chief engineer reported. "Something is blocking our signals. But I cannot identify the source." Gorn's smile faded. "Fix it." "I am trying, Admiral. But the interference is adaptive. Every time we adjust our frequency, it adjusts with us. It is almost like... Like what?" The engineer hesitated. "Like something is listening." By the end of the 4th day, short-range communications began to fail as well. Ships that had been able to talk to each other freely now struggled to send even basic messages. Captains had to use signal lights and courier shuttles to coordinate movements. The fleet, which had moved as one perfect unit, began to spread apart in confusion, and then the first ship vanished. It was a patrol vessel on the outer edge of the formation. One moment it was there on the sensors, keeping watch for enemies that never appeared. The next moment, It was simply gone. No explosion. No distress signal. No debris. It had blinked out of existence like a candle flame in the wind. Admiral Gorn stared at the empty space where the ship had been. What happened? Unknown, Admiral, the sensor officer said. His voice was shaking. There was no attack. No weapon fire. It just disappeared. Drell stepped forward. Admiral, we must consider the possibility that we are not alone here. The humans may be using stealth technology beyond our understanding. Impossible, Gorn snapped. No species can hide from Velen sensors. We are the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Then explain what happened to that ship. Gorn opened his mouth to reply, but before he could speak, another ship vanished. Then another. 3 patrol vessels gone in less than a minute, each one disappearing without a trace. Fear began to spread through the fleet. Soldiers who had conquered 100 worlds now looked over their shoulders at shadows that seemed to move. Captains ordered their crews to double the watch. But what good was watching when you could not see the enemy? On the 5th day, Commander Drell found something strange in the sensor logs. A tiny flicker of movement that lasted less than a second. He enhanced the image again and again until he could finally see what it was. A ship. Small and black, shaped like a blade. It had appeared behind one of the missing patrol vessels for just a moment before both ships disappeared. The human ship had been so close it was almost touching the Velen vessel. And yet no one had seen it coming? Drell brought the image to Admiral Gorn, who stared at it in silence. They are hunting us, Drell said. Picking off our ships one by one. This is not a retreat, Admiral. This is a trap. And we walked right into it. For the first time since the campaign began, Gorn felt something cold in his chest. It was not quite fear. Not yet. But it was close, far away, hidden in a field of sensor-dampening asteroids. Captain Lee Yuna watched the Velen fleet from the bridge of the Silent Thunder. Her ship was small, but deadly. Designed for one purpose, to kill without being seen. She had been watching the enemy for 5 days now, learning their patterns, studying their weaknesses. And now that their communications were blind and their formation was broken, she knew it was time. Phase 2, she said into her come. Let them hear us now. Across the void on every Velen ship simultaneously, the speakers crackled to life. The interference that had blocked all signals suddenly cleared, replaced by a single human voice. It was calm, almost gentle, and it said only 3 words. You were warned. Then the speakers went dead and the silence returned. On the bridge of the burning dawn, Admiral Gorn stood frozen. Around him, his officers stared at each other with wide eyes. They had all heard the message. They had all felt the weight behind those simple words. Commander Drell was the first to speak. Admiral, what do we do? Gorn did not answer. For the first time in his long career of conquest, he did not know. Somewhere in the darkness, something was waiting for them, and it was no longer hiding. The Velen Empire had conquered 300 species. They had perfected the art of war across centuries of bloodshed and victory. They knew every tactic, every strategy, every trick that a desperate enemy might try. Or so they believed. The humans did not fight like any species they had ever faced. There were no fleet battles. No lines of warships exchanging fire across the void. No charges, no retreats, no honorable last stands. Instead, there was only silence and death, and the growing certainty that something terrible was hunting them in the dark. Lieutenant Bei Wu sat in the pilot seat of the Black Veil, a stealth destroyer no larger than a Velen shuttle. His ship had been designed for one thing: to appear from nowhere, strike fast, and vanish before the enemy could react. He had done this 17 times in the past week. Each time was the same: find a target, wait for the right moment, disable the engines, disappear. He never destroyed the ships. That was not the plan. Dead ships were forgotten. Crippled ships were terrifying. They drifted through space like wounded animals, their crews screaming for help that would never come. They were messages, warnings, proof that the humans could kill whenever they wanted but chose not to. Not yet. Tonight, his target was a supply vessel at the back of the Velen formation. It carried food, water, and medicine for the fleet. Without it, the soldiers would grow hungry. Hungry soldiers made mistakes. Beiwu guided his ship through the darkness, invisible to every sensor the Velens possessed. He moved slowly, patiently, like a shark circling prey. When he was close enough to see the supply vessel's hull markings with his own eyes, he fired. A single pulse of energy struck the engine block. The lights on the Velen ship flickered and died. Its engines went silent. It began to drift, helpless and blind. Beiwu was gone before anyone knew he had been there. On the burning dawn, Admiral Gorn received the news with cold fury. Another ship lost. Another piece of his fleet torn away without a fight. He slammed his fist against the console and turned to his officers.
Find them.
He roared. I do not care what it takes. Find these human ships and destroy them. But his officers had no answers. The humans left no trails. Their ships made no sound, emitted no heat, reflected no light. They were ghosts in every sense of the word, and ghosts could not be caught. The psychological warfare was even worse than the physical attacks. Velen's soldiers began finding messages burned into the walls of their ships. Words in their own language, carved with surgical precision. We gave you a choice. No one knew how the messages got there. No one had seen or heard anything. But every morning there were more. Some soldiers stopped sleeping. Others refused to leave their quarters. A few simply broke, screaming about invisible enemies that watched them from the shadows. The fleet's morale crumbled like sand in a storm. Sergeant Hante led the boarding parties. His team was small, just 12 soldiers trained in zero-gravity combat. They wore black armor that absorbed light and sound. They carried no guns, only blades and tranquilizers. Their job was not to kill. Their job was to terrify. Each night, they picked a different Velen ship. They cut through the hull in places the enemy would never expect. They moved through the corridors like smoke, silent and unstoppable. They knocked out guards, disabled security systems, and left their messages on the walls. And then they disappeared, leaving only confusion and fear behind. Hante had been fighting since he was 17 years old. He had seen the worst of what war could do, but he had also learned something important in those long years of blood and pain. The greatest weapon was not a gun or a bomb. It was doubt. Make your enemy doubt everything, and they would defeat themselves. Commander Drell understood this now. He sat in his quarters on the burning dawn, staring at a damaged human drone that his soldiers had managed to capture. It was small, no bigger than his hand, and it had been flying through the ship's ventilation system when they found it. He opened the drone carefully, expecting to find weapons or explosives inside. Instead, he found a recording device. He pressed the activation button, and a hologram flickered to life. A human woman appeared before him. She had dark hair and calm eyes, and she spoke in a voice that was almost gentle. Your empire has conquered species who did not know war, she said. Species who had never faced true predators. Species who surrendered because they did not know how to fight. We are not them. Dr. Ko Mina paused, and something in her expression changed. It was not anger. It was not hatred. It was something far more unsettling. It was pity. Humanity was born in war. We spent 10,000 years killing each other before we ever reached the stars. We learned every lesson that blood could teach. We refined destruction into an art form. And when we finally found peace, it was not because we became weak. It was because we became so dangerous that even we were afraid of ourselves. She leaned closer to the camera. You should have listened to the beacon. You should have turned back, but you did not. And now you will learn what every human child already knows. There is nothing in this galaxy more terrifying than a human who has been given a reason to fight. The hologram faded. Drell sat in silence for a long time. He thought about ordering the recording destroyed. He thought about pretending he had never seen it. But he knew it would not matter. The truth was already spreading through the fleet like a virus. The soldiers had seen too much. They had heard too many whispers in the dark. The humans were not running. They were not hiding. They were herding the Velen fleet like animals, pushing them toward something. And whatever waited at the end of that path, Drell knew with terrible certainty that none of them would survive to see it. He closed his eyes and prayed to gods he had never believed in. No one answered. 2 weeks had passed since the Third Conquest fleet crossed the human border. 40 warships had entered that dark space with confidence and pride. Now only 11 remained. Admiral Gorn stood on the bridge of the Burning Dawn and stared at the tactical display. 29 ships gone. 29 crews vanished into the void without a proper battle, without a chance to fight back. His hands trembled as he gripped the railing. He had not slept in 4 days. The fleet was dying. Not from weapons fire or enemy attacks, but from fear. Soldiers refused to man their posts. Officers gave contradictory orders. Supply ships had been captured or crippled, leaving the remaining vessels short on food and fuel. The mighty Velen war machine had been reduced to a handful of terrified survivors drifting through enemy space. Commander Drell approached him carefully. "Admiral, we must retreat. If we turn back now, we might be able to reach the border before the border is blocked," Gorn interrupted. His voice was hollow, empty of the confidence that had once defined him. "They have placed mines and debris in our path. Every route we try leads to more traps," he laughed bitterly. "They are not trying to kill us, Drell. They are pushing us somewhere, like animals being driven to slaughter." Drell had suspected this for days, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. "What do we do?" Gorn was silent for a long moment. Then something changed in his eyes. The fear was still there, but beneath it, a spark of the old fire returned. Desperation had burned away his arrogance, but it had also burned away his caution. "We attack," he said. "If we are going to die, we will die fighting. There is a human colony 3 jumps from here, lightly defended according to our remaining scouts. We take that colony. We capture their civilians. We use them as shields and bargaining chips." He straightened his uniform. "The humans may be clever hunters, but they will not sacrifice their own people. It is our only chance," Drell wanted to argue. He wanted to say that this plan was madness. The humans had already proven they were 10 steps ahead of everything the fleet tried. But he had no better ideas. And anything was better than waiting in the dark for the next ship to vanish. "Understood, Admiral," he said quietly. "I will give the order." The 11 remaining ships of the Third Conquest fleet gathered their strength and jumped toward the human colony. They emerged from faster-than-light travel expecting to find a defenseless world. Soft targets. Frightened civilians. Easy victory instead. They found Admiral Park J waiting for them. The Sol Defense Fleet filled the viewport like a wall of steel and fire. 200 warships arranged in perfect formation. Thousands of fighters swarming between them like angry bees. And behind them, the colony hung in space, its observation decks crowded with citizens who had come to watch. They were not running. They were not hiding. They were watching with the calm certainty of people who knew they were safe. Admiral Gorn stared at the impossible sight before him. His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Admiral," his sensor officer whispered, "they outnumber us 20 to 1. Our weapons cannot even scratch their shields at this range. They have been waiting for us." They knew exactly where we would go. Of course they knew, Gorn realized. They had been pushing us here from the beginning. Every trap, every attack, every moment of terror had been designed to hurt us to this exact spot. We thought we were making a desperate gamble. We were just following their plan. His communications console lit up. An incoming transmission from the human flagship. "Open it," Gorn commanded. Admiral Park J appeared on the screen. He was older than Gorn had expected, with gray hair and tired eyes, but there was no weakness in his face. No anger either. Just calm, absolute certainty. "Admiral Gorn," J said, "you have one chance to surrender. Order your ships to power down their weapons and prepare for boarding. Your crews will be taken prisoner and treated according to galactic conventions. You have my word." Gorn's pride flared one last time. "And if I refuse?" Jay's expression did not change. "Then none of you will leave this system alive." It was not a threat. It was a simple statement of fact. delivered with the same tone someone might use to describe the weather. Gorn thought of his crew. His soldiers, the families waiting for them back home. For a moment, he considered surrender. For a moment, he imagined a future where he might see his world again. But he was a conqueror. He had spent his entire life taking what he wanted by force. He did not know how to kneel. All ships, he commanded, attack. The battle lasted 11 minutes. The Velen ships fought with everything they had. They fired every weapon, launched every fighter, threw every piece of themselves at the human fleet. It made no difference. The humans moved with perfect coordination as if they shared one mind. Their weapons struck with surgical precision, disabling engines, cutting through shields, tearing ships apart piece by piece. Admiral Gorn watched from his bridge as the burning dawn was hit again and again. Flames erupted around him. Officers screamed as consoles exploded. The great flagship of the Third Conquest Fleet, the pride of the Velen Empire, crumbled like paper in a storm. When it was over, not a single Velen ship remained operational. Their wreckage drifted through space, silent monuments to arrogance and pride. Admiral Park J boarded what was left of the burning dawn an hour later. He walked through corridors filled with smoke and debris, stepping over bodies that would never move again. He found Commander Drell in a corner of the bridge, badly wounded, but still breathing. Drell looked up at him through eyes clouded with pain. "Why?" he asked. "Why do you fight like this? With no honor? No mercy?" Jay knelt beside him and spoke quietly. "Mercy is for those who show it. Honor is for those who earn it. You came to enslave our children. There is no version of that story where you go home." He stood and turned to leave. Then he paused. "But you will live," he said. "Someone has to tell your empire what happened here." He walked away, leaving Drell alone in the wreckage of everything he had believed. The escape pod drifted through the cold darkness of space for 12 days before it reached Velen territory. Inside, Commander Drell lay on a narrow cot, his wounds wrapped in human bandages, his mind haunted by memories that would never fade. The humans had been thorough. They'd treated his injuries, given him food and water, and programmed his pod to follow a safe route home. They'd even included a data chip containing records of everything that had happened, sensor logs, battle footage, and a final message from Admiral Park J. They wanted the Empire to know exactly what they had done and how easily they had done it. When a Velen patrol ship finally found him, Drell did not feel relief. He felt only dread. He knew what waited for him at home. He knew what he would have to say. The throne room of High Lord Marak had not changed in the weeks since Drell had last seen it. The same black pillars, same golden light, the same cold, powerful presence radiating from the throne. But now, standing before it in his torn uniform and healing wounds, Drell saw it differently. It looked smaller somehow, fragile. Marak stared down at him with eyes that burned with barely controlled rage. Around them, the court had gathered to hear the report. Generals, admirals, lords of 100 conquered worlds. All of them waiting to learn the fate of the Third Conquest Fleet. "Speak," Merrick commanded. "Tell me what happened to my fleet." Drell had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times during his journey home. He had imagined speaking with strength, with dignity, with the pride of a Velen officer. When he opened his mouth, only the truth came out. "They are gone, my lord. All of them. 40 warships. 800 fighters. 50,000 soldiers. Destroyed." A murmur rippled through the court. Generals exchanged glances. Cain Merrills shifted uneasily on their feet. Merrick's expression did not change. Destroyed by what? Another empire? A hidden alliance? "By humans, my lord. Just humans." The murmuring grew louder. Someone laughed nervously, as if waiting for the joke to be revealed. Well, Drell did not laugh. His eyes were empty, haunted by things he could never unsee. He told them everything. The silent systems, the ships that vanished without a trace, the psychological warfare, the messages burned into walls, the calm, methodical precision with which the humans had dismantled the greatest fleet the Empire had ever sent into unknown space. He told them about the final battle, if it could even be called that, 11 ships against 200. 11 minutes of slaughter. When he finished, the throne room was silent. No one moved. No one spoke. The weight of his words hung in the air like poison. High Lord Marek rose slowly from his throne. His face was twisted with fury, but beneath the anger, something else flickered in his eyes. Something that looked almost like fear. "You are a coward," he declared. "You fled while your comrades died. You bring me tales of ghosts and shadows to excuse your failure." He turned to his guards. "Take him away. Execute him at dawn." "Wait," Drell said. His voice was calm, steady. The voice of a man who had already accepted death. "There's more." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the data chip the humans had given him. He held it up for the court to see. "They gave me this. They wanted you to watch it." Marek hesitated. His curiosity outweighed his rage, if only for a moment. He gestured for one of his advisors to take the chip and insert it into the throne room's display system. A hologram flickered to life. Admiral Park J stood before them, as calm and steady as he had been on the day he destroyed the fleet. His voice filled the throne room, and every soul present listened in silence. "High Lord Marek, your fleet crossed our border," he warned them. They did not listen. None of them returned. Jay paused, letting the words sink in. "This is not a threat. This is a fact. We did not want this war. We built our beacon to prevent it. We broadcast our warning in every language we knew, hoping that anyone who heard it would understand. Your fleet heard it and chose to ignore it. That choice was theirs. The consequences were ours to deliver." He stepped closer to the camera, and his expression hardened. "Send another fleet, and you will receive the same fact again. Send your entire armada, and your empire will become a memory. We do not want war. But if you bring war to us, we will end it. Humanity always does." The hologram faded. The throne room was silent. Marek stood frozen before his throne. His hands were clenched into fists, his jaw tight with fury, but he did not speak. He did not order another fleet assembled. He did not declare vengeance or promise retribution. Instead, he turned to his advisors with eyes that had lost their fire. "Recall the fleet," he said quietly. "All of them. Pull back to our borders." The words echoed through the throne room like thunder. Generals stared in disbelief. Admirals opened their mouths to protest. But when they saw the look on Marek's face, they fell silent. They had never seen their High Lord look this way. They had never seen him afraid. In the weeks that followed, the story spread across the galaxy. Traders carried it from port to port. Refugees whispered it in crowded ships. Explorers told it around dying campfires on distant worlds. The story of the empire that ignored the warning, the fleet that never came home. The humans who fought from shadows and never lost a single ship. And at the border of human space, the beacon continued its endless broadcast. Ships of every species passed by it now, and every single one of them turned away. They had heard the stories, they had seen the proof, and they knew with absolute certainty that some warnings were not meant to be tested. This is the territory of the United Human Collective. Turn back, we do not wish conflict. But if you cross this line, you will find none. Far away, on a small blue world called Earth, Admiral Park J sat in his garden and watched the sunset. Captain Lee Yuna had visited earlier to report that all forces had returned home safely. Dr. Ko. Mina had confirmed that Velen communications were full of fear and confusion. The war was over before it truly began. Jay closed his eyes and felt the warmth of the fading sun on his face. He thought of the soldiers who had served under him. The families who would never know how close they had come to destruction. The peace they had fought so hard to protect. He did not feel pride. He did not feel triumph. Felt only relief, heavy and quiet, settling into his bones like rain soaking into dry earth. Somewhere across the stars, the beacon kept singing its warning. And now, finally, everyone was listening.